Hello and welcome to CMS Forex News. I'm your market analyst, Nick Nassad. Today is Friday, January 16, 2009. We begin with some fundamental data out of Switzerland. Swiss producer and import prices were down 0.7% in December, a bigger than expected drop, though about half the decline we saw in November. On the year, the index saw a growth rate of 0.4%. European exports, meanwhile, declined 4.7% in November, the fastest pace in more than 8 years. Foreign demand for the region's cars, trucks, and planes is being hard hit as key trading partners went into recession and foreign companies and consumers scaled back purchases. Imports for the month were down 2.5%, so the trade balance in seasonally adjusted terms fell further into deficit at 4.9 billion euros. The euro-pound pair hit a low overnight near 0.8840, which was support from last week's low set on Friday. The euro has been pressured the last half of this week in anticipation of the ECB interest rate decision and a sense of risk aversion in the markets. The euro's fortunes, however, changed today, and it rose 190 pips from its intraday low to climb to the 0.9040 level. The euro was also higher against the dollar, breaking a streak of 5 days of declines. From yesterday's low near 1.3050, the euro rallied 290 pips to climb above 1.33. The New York session saw the euro giving up some of those gains as US equities fell in the middle part of the New York session, reversing some of the risk appetite that had helped the euro. Consumer prices in the US decreased 0.7% in December as the recession deepened, forcing stores to keep cutting prices to attract consumers. Prices are down 1.7% in November. The annual inflation rate showed an increase of only 0.1%, which is the smallest annual gain since 1954. The core rate, which excludes food and energy prices, was flat on the month, putting the annual core rate at 1.8%, the weakest reading since 2003. U.S. industrial production fell 2% in December, more than doubling the decline expected by economists. Factories cut back on production in the face of weaker demand from both home and abroad. U.S. exports and most global trade numbers are sharply down to end 2008, while U.S. retail sales endure the longest string of declines in at least 16 years. The number of plants, meanwhile, in use fell to 73.6%, the lowest level since 1983. In our final release from the U.S., the preliminary release of the UMich Consumer Sentiment Index for January showed an increase to 61.9 from December's 60.1. The future expectations subgauge rose, as did expectations for inflation. The increase in the 12-month and 5-year forecast for prices is a surprise considering how all incoming data has been showing prices receding as the recession deepened. The dollar-yen pair broke out of its wedge today, pushing above resistance at the 89.80 level, climbing to a new high for the week at 90.90. Risk appetite was boosted by the injection of $20 billion by the US Treasury into Bank of America, and also assurances it will provide a backstop against losses on some $118 billion of the bank's assets. There was some back and forth action during New York trading as stocks started positive, fell into the red, and then rallied in the late afternoon. The pound-dollar pair had a very volatile session as it rallied 490 pips between yesterday's low and today's high, but then gave up about two-thirds of those gains in New York trading. The pound was boosted by news that the government will set aside £200 million to help property owners who face repossession in England. Gains in UK equities was also another factor supporting the pound, but that sense of risk appetite dried up as US stocks went south. The swing back to risk appetite overnight helped the US dollar-Canadian dollar pair go back to its upward sloping line of support at 1.2315. However, that support held, and the pair rallied in the New York session to stay within its upward channel. Let's take a look at some important releases coming out next week. Monday is a national holiday in the US, but the first half of the week will see consumer price data from New Zealand and the UK, along with the Eurozone and German ZEW economic sentiment. Also on Tuesday, the Bank of Canada will decide on interest rates, where policymakers are expected to cut rates by 50 basis points. On Wednesday, we get unemployment data out of the UK and meeting minutes from the Bank of England. And that wraps up this week in the Forex markets. Thank you for joining us here at cmsfx.com and have a great weekend.